It was just 2 years ago, right here in our town, when I first came across that house. Abandoned for what I believe must have been close to 2 decades, it had become a relic of forgotten history. The house was old, one of those time-worn structures that looked as if it had stories to tell, nestled deep within the forest. Once a proud home, it had slowly faded into the background as nature began to reclaim it. No one had shown interest in buying it, and over time, it became nothing more than a distant memory for the townsfolk, gradually enveloped by thick trees, vines, and underbrush. The house had all but vanished from public awareness, left to decay silently under the weight of time. I had always been fascinated by places like this, forgotten, eerie, and rich with untold stories. There's something about the quiet, the solitude, and the hidden history that draws me in. These abandoned buildings speak in ways that modern spaces never can. So on a random afternoon, when I found myself with a rare free moment from work, I decided to do what I'd always done when curiosity struck. I set off to explore. The house was barely a short walk away from where I lived, tucked behind a veil of trees that had long overtaken its boundaries. I didn't bother calling anyone to join me, figuring it wasn't anything particularly special. It was close by, not nearly as intriguing or imposing as some of the other spots my friends and I had ventured into in the past. So with just a small backpack, my flashlight, and a sense of adventure, I set off alone. The path leading into the woods was almost entirely concealed by overgrown grass and tangled vines. The gravel driveway, once a clear route, had all but disappeared under the weight of time. Determined, I pushed through the underbrush, each step feeling like a journey further into a forgotten world. As the forest grew denser, I pulled out my flashlight to guide my way through the dimming daylight. It took longer than I anticipated to reach the house. It seemed further into the woods than I had remembered, like the forest itself was trying to keep it hidden. The old wooden structure stood there, weathered by years of neglect, looking more like a forgotten cabin than a home. The absence of a garage or any modern additions made it feel like it belonged to a different era, a time before the world had rushed forward. I approached cautiously, walking along the edge of the house to one of the front windows. The glass was shattered, the remnants lying like jagged teeth at the base. I leaned my head through the frame, straining my ears to catch any sound from inside. The silence was thick and unsettling. I waited, listening for anything that might break the stillness. Footsteps, movement, or even the faintest whisper of someone hiding within. But there was nothing. I exhaled, trying to shake the growing tension in my chest, and walked around to the front door. It stood ajar, a sliver of darkness peering out from inside. I pushed it open without hesitation, the hinges groaning as the door swung wide. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of mildew and decay. The decay wasn't just in the structure, it was in the very essence of the house. Every step I took, every creak of the floorboards under my weight, seemed to remind me of how long this place had been abandoned. The living room greeted me first. It was a scene frozen in time, yet disturbed by the inevitable passage of years. A torn, dusty sofa sat against the wall, abandoned as if the owner had walked away from it only moments ago. Several picture frames lay shattered on the floor, the photographs within faded and curled. It was a strange, almost haunting sight. A home that still held traces of its past, yet felt completely empty. I made my way through the first floor, my flashlight sweeping over the forgotten items scattered around the room. An old lamp, a rusted coffee table, a stack of newspapers, yellowed by age. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the silence grew more oppressive with each passing second. The house felt alive in a way that was hard to explain. The first floor was smaller than I expected, and soon I found myself climbing the rickety stairs to the second floor. The stairs creaked and moaned under my feet, and I had to steady myself several times to avoid losing my balance. I was surprised they hadn't completely collapsed. When I reached the top, I found myself in a narrow hallway that split into 2 rooms. One of the doors was already open, and the other was shut tight. I peered into the open room first. It was empty, eerily so, in stark contrast to the mess downstairs. Nothing was out of place, nothing that could hint at who had once lived here. My flashlight flicked around the space, its beam catching the remnants of dust particles drifting lazily through the air. Just as I was about to step inside, I heard it, a soft, unnatural, and it immediately froze me in place. My heart skipped a beat, my breath catching in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the noise. But there was no time to process it further. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I instinctively turned toward the stairs. Something was not right. The sound was unlike anything that should have been coming from the house. It wasn't a creak or groan from old wood. It was something else, something unsettling. My heartbeat quickened and my instincts screamed at me to leave. I didn't belong here. I'd spent enough time exploring abandoned places to know that feeling when things were off. And right now, everything was screaming off. I raced down the stairs, my flashlight cutting through the darkness in frantic sweeps, but there was nothing. The house had returned to its silence, only my breath echoing in my ears. No movement, no sign of anything, just the stillness of something, dead. That gut feeling, the one that told me to go, was impossible to ignore. I wasn't going to stick around to find out what else this place was hiding. I moved quickly down the hallway, shining the light over every corner, every shadow. But when I reached the front of the house, my stomach dropped. The door, the one I had left wide open when I came in, was now firmly shut. It wasn't just closed either. It was locked. The handle wouldn't budge, and panic gripped me instantly. Someone else was here, no doubt about it. Someone had locked me inside. My heart was pounding as I darted toward the broken window. Without thinking, I hoisted myself up and out of it, the rough edges of the glass cutting into my palms as I scrambled out. I didn't stop to look behind me. I ran, not bothering to follow the path, darting through the thick woods with my flashlight off. Every rustle in the trees made my heart leap in my chest. As I pushed through the underbrush, a strange light caught my attention. Red and blue flickers, sirens. I froze, crouching behind a tree, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. 2 police cars appeared at the edge of the woods, cutting through the tall grass and speeding toward the house. They rushed by me without a second glance, their lights painting the trees in eerie, unnatural colors. I stayed still, watching them as they drove past. I didn't know what was going on or why they were here, but something deep down told me they weren't there for me. There was no reason for them to be. After a moment of hesitation, I didn't wait any longer. I sprinted out of the woods and didn't look back until I was safely inside my house. I tried to find out more about what had happened, what had drawn the police there, but no one ever mentioned it. No news, no reports. The house, as far as I could tell, was forgotten again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad had been going on inside. Whoever, or whatever, had been in that house, I had a feeling it wasn't something I ever wanted to know. I'm lucky to be here, safe and sound, far away from whatever dark secret that house was hiding. Story 2. It was the fall of 2018. I was living with 2 close friends, Alex and Ben, in a small apartment on the edge of town. We were all in our final year of college, juggling classes, part-time jobs, and trying to squeeze in whatever semblance of a social life we could. Despite how busy we were, one thing we always made time for was our weekend adventures. Hiking, exploring abandoned buildings, or wandering into unfamiliar parts of the city. Those were the things that gave us a break from the constant pressure of school. One chilly Friday evening, as the sun set early and the air grew crisp, we decided to take a spontaneous trip to an old, supposedly abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. We had heard rumors about it for months. It had been shut down for years, but no one knew exactly why. Some said it was full of strange occurrences, while others swore it had a dark history. That was enough to spark our curiosity, and on a whim, we decided it was time to see it for ourselves. We piled into Ben's truck and drove to the edge of the city, where the dense woods gave way to the forgotten ruins of a once thriving institution. The asylum was perched on a hill, shrouded by overgrown trees and surrounded by rusted fences. There was something unsettling about the place even from a distance. Its crumbling structure loomed like a ghost from the past. As we got closer, the landscape felt eerily desolate, as if the entire area had been abandoned by both people and time. We parked at the base of the hill and hiked the rest of the way up. The trees grew thicker as we neared the building, their twisted branches reaching out like fingers. The closer we got, the more we realized just how massive the asylum was. It looked like a fortress, tall, gray stone walls, shattered windows, and a high iron gate that was wide open, as though inviting for adventure, was the first to step inside. "Come on, guys, this is going to be incredible," he called back to us. Ben and I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of us. We followed Alex through the broken gate and into the courtyard, where we could hear the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls. The silence felt unnatural, almost oppressive. Inside the asylum, the air was thick with dust and decay. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the floors creaked underfoot. We explored the first few rooms, a few empty offices, some old rusted filing cabinets, and a broken elevator that led to the upper floors. The place smelled like mildew and rot, and it was clear that no one had set foot here in years. Yet, there was something about the building that felt alive. It was as though the building itself was watching us. We made our way to the stairwell and climbed up to the second floor. The stairwell was narrow, and as we ascended, a strange chill settled over us. The higher we went, the darker it became, with only the faint light of our flashlights cutting through the gloom. We stepped into a long hallway, the walls lined with old doors. Some were partially open, others locked tight. The further we ventured, the more the atmosphere grew heavy, as if something was waiting for us just out of sight. As we walked, I heard faint whispers, barely audible, but unmistakable. I turned to Alex and Ben. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Both of them looked at me, confused. "Don't be paranoid," Alex said, laughing it off, but I could feel my skin prickling with unease. The whispers seemed to follow us, echoing off the walls, growing louder as we ventured deeper into the asylum. Suddenly, the air grew colder. I saw my breath mist in front of me, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice shaky. But before we could turn around, we heard a door creak open behind us. We froze. "What was that?" Ben whispered, his voice tight with fear. Slowly, we turned. There, at the end of the hallway, was a figure standing in the shadows. It was too dark to make out any details, but there was something undeniably wrong about it. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its gaze on us, cold and malevolent. "Is anyone there?" Alex called out, trying to sound brave, but the tremor in his voice was unmistakable. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it started to step forward, its movement slow but deliberate, as if it was circling us. We stood frozen, too scared to make a sound. Then, without warning, the figure lunged. I heard Alex shout, and Ben and I instinctively grabbed him, pulling him away from whatever it was that had been coming for us. We didn't wait for any explanation or rational thought. We ran. We sprinted through the hallways, not daring to look behind us. The asylum seemed endless, the doors and corridors stretching out like a maze. The air grew suffocating, and the sounds of footsteps, both ours and something else's, echoed around us. Something was chasing us, something fast, something relentless. We finally found the stairwell and barreled down the stairs, almost tripping in our panic. We didn't stop running until we reached the ground floor and burst through the front doors, gasping for breath. The cold night air hit us like a slap, but the feeling of being outside didn't ease the terror that gripped me. We were out, but what was still inside? We didn't speak a word on the way back to the truck. Our minds were racing, each of us trying to make sense of what had just happened, but we all knew that something in that building had been waiting for us, something that shouldn't have been there. We didn't go back, of course. We never spoke of it again, as if acknowledging the events would somehow make them real. But I knew what I saw, what we all saw. The figure, the whispers, the coldness. Whatever haunted that asylum was not of this world, and it wanted us to know that we were never truly alone.